Have you ever sat across from someone at a dinner table, someone who just called you family, and watched them smile while they tried to take everything your dead husband left you? And the thing that really gets you, the thing that keeps you up at 3 a.m. staring at your kitchen ceiling isn't what they said. It's that they practiced it first. You could tell. The pauses were rehearsed. Yeah, that was me. A Saturday night in June. A barbecue restaurant in East Nashville that I am not going to name because the owner is a genuinely kind man named Carl who smokes his own brisket and makes a peach cobbler that has no business being that good, and he does not deserve to be associated with what happened at the long table by the window. Let me set the scene. I showed up in black. Not because I was making a statement, because 90% of my closet had turned black in the 5 weeks since my husband died. Grief does that to a woman. It turns you into someone who owns 6 cardigans in the same color and doesn't notice until her neighbor points it out. Shannon was waiting by the front door. Shannon is Patrick's younger sister, 33, pediatric nurse at Vanderbilt, the kind of woman who can get a screaming toddler to hold still for a blood draw and still make the kid laugh afterward. She has a finely tuned radar for when adults are about to behave like children. She hugged me. Quick. Tight. Then she leaned in and whispered, "Mom brought her good purse. Something's coming." I should have turned around right there. I should have walked back to my car, driven home, and eaten cereal on my couch in my pajamas, but I didn't. Because I was 5 weeks into being a widow and I was still operating on autopilot, which meant I showed up to things when people told me to show up to things. The table was long, 8 seats. Dolores sat at the head like she was chairing a board meeting. Dolores is my mother-in-law, 72 years old. Retired office manager for a real estate firm in Germantown. 26 years behind a desk, which means she can reorganize a filing system, micromanage a potluck, and manipulate a room full of relatives simultaneously and without breaking a sweat. She watched me walk in the way a cat watches a moth land on a window screen, not yet decided whether to swat or simply wait. Uncle Teddy, that's Dolores's younger brother, was already seated. Teddy is a retired plumber who communicates primarily through nods and the consumption of smoked meats. He had a full rack of ribs in front of him and appeared to be at peace with the universe. Aunt Francine, Dolores's older sister, 75 loud, already on her second glass of something pink, leaned across the table and asked me how old I was. She has asked me this at every single family gathering for 8 years. Every Thanksgiving, every Easter, every 4th of July cookout. 8 years. Same question. 35, I said. Still 35. Was 35 last Christmas. Will be 35 until October. Francine nodded like I had just revealed the meaning of life. The breadbasket, which as far as I could tell was the only thing at that entire table that had not betrayed me, sat between us untouched. I took a roll. I buttered it. I did not know it yet, but that roll was going to be the last peaceful thing I consumed for approximately 3 months. Dolores stood up between the appetizers and the main course. She picked up her glass of sweet tea. She tapped it with a butter knife, ting, 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 and she smiled. The kind of smile a woman gives when she has been rehearsing a speech in her bathroom mirror for 2 weeks, and she is finally getting to deliver it. Before we eat, she said, I need to say something to this family. As the matriarch of the Callahan family, Uncle Teddy coughed into his napkin. Teddy has never once in his life acknowledged Dolores as the matriarch of anything, including her own condo. Patrick, she said. My son. Her voice cracked on the word son, and I want to be clear with you. It was a manufactured crack. I have watched this woman argue with a Comcast representative for 45 minutes without a single tremor in her voice. She does not crack. She calculated that crack. We lost him, she said. But he left behind more than we knew. I set my fork down. He had a daughter, she said, a beautiful baby girl named Rosie, 8 months old, Patrick's spitting image, with a lovely young woman named Jolene, a good woman, a kind woman. She paused. She looked directly at me. Quite honestly, she said, I like her. I like her more than well. Let's not do that tonight. Something happened inside my chest that I don't have a clinical term for. It was not pain exactly. It was more like the sound a bridge makes when the cables start to snap. A low, structural groan that nobody hears except the bridge itself. My face did not move. I want you to understand that. Because I learned a long time ago, probably the first Thanksgiving I ever spent with this family, that you do not give Dolores Callahan the reaction she paid for. You keep your hands flat. You keep your breathing even. You let her finish. She finished. "We've hired a lawyer," she said. "Jolene and Rosie will receive half the inheritance and the house." She looked at me when she said the word house. She had never once in 8 years set foot inside my home. Not once. But she said the house like she had already redecorated the living room in her mind. "It's what Patrick would have wanted," she said. "It's what God would want." She sat down. She picked up her sweet tea. She took a sip. Aunt Francine, and I am not making this up, I could not make this up if I tried, raised her glass toward an empty chair and said, "To Jolene." She toasted an empty chair. For a woman who was not in the room, before I, the widow, had said a single word. I looked at Shannon. Shannon was staring into her water glass like it contained emergency instructions. I looked at Uncle Teddy. Teddy had stopped chewing. That alone should tell you how serious the moment was. I looked at Dolores. She was watching me, waiting, her fingers wrapped around that sweet tea glass like it was a gavel, and she had just delivered the verdict. I smiled. Not a big smile, just enough. "Happy birthday to the family, Dolores," I said. And I picked up my fork. Let me back up, because if I start with the bomb, you won't understand why I didn't flinch when it went off. Patrick had been dead for 5 weeks. Motorcycle accident on Route 40, coming home from a late shift at the restaurant. Single vehicle. A Tuesday night, 11:43, according to the report. The medical examiner said it was quick. People always say that. I don't know if it helps. I don't know if quick is supposed to be a comfort or just a thing people say because the alternative is worse and nobody wants to sit in that. I was awake when it happened, not because I knew, because Patrick always texted me when he left work. Every single night for 6 years. The same text, heading home. "Love you, don't wait up." And I always waited up, every single time. He knew I would. I knew I would. It was our thing. The kind of small, invisible ritual that holds a marriage together in ways you don't realize until it stops. That night, the text didn't come. I sat on the couch with my phone on the armrest, and I watched the clock on the microwave go from 11:15 to 11:30 to 11:45 to midnight. I told myself his phone died. I told myself he got caught up closing. I told myself 17 different stories, each one less convincing than the last, because I am a bookkeeper by profession, and I know when numbers don't add up. And the numbers that night did not add up. The knock came at 2:11 in the morning. I know the exact time because I looked at my phone before I opened the door. Bookkeeper. We note timestamps. It's what we do. There were 2 officers. The younger one, I don't know his name, I never asked. He was maybe 25. His hands were shaking. His partner, a woman about my age with her hair pulled back tight, did the talking. She was calm, professional. She said the words in the right order. "Ma'am, husband, accident, Route 40, pronounced at the scene. I'm so sorry." I made them sit down. Both of them. I went to the kitchen and I poured 2 glasses of water, and I brought the glasses back and I set them on the coffee table, and the young one picked his up and drank the whole thing in one go. I have been told since that this is not how that's supposed to work, that the officers are supposed to take care of you. But I didn't know what else to do with my hands, and when I don't know what to do with my hands, I do something useful. I get water. I organize a drawer. I count something. I should probably tell you about Patrick. Before we get to the part where his mother tried to sell his ghost for half a house, Patrick Callahan was 38 years old. He managed a location of a restaurant chain off Broadway in Nashville, the kind of place where tourists order too much barbecue and locals avoid on weekends. He was not a chef. He was not an entrepreneur. He was a man who liked people and was good at making a dining room run smoothly, and there is more dignity in that than most people give credit for. He laughed too loud at his own jokes, every single time. The kind of laugh where his whole body went into it and his face turned red and people at nearby tables would look over and half of them would be annoyed and the other half would start laughing too without even knowing what the joke was. That was Patrick. Contagious in the best and worst ways. He forgot birthdays, mine included, 2 years in a row, but he remembered things nobody else would. He remembered the exact date we first ate at a Waffle House in the middle of the night because my car broke down outside Murfreesboro and the tow truck took 2 hours and the only place open was a Waffle House at exit 217. He remembered that I ordered a pecan waffle and he ordered scattered, smothered, and covered hash browns. And I laughed so hard at something he said that orange juice came out of my nose. September 14th. He remembered September 14th every year. He forgot our anniversary twice. He never forgot September 14th. That's the kind of man he was. Not a greeting card, not a Hallmark movie, a real person who got the big things wrong sometimes and the weird little things exactly right. Grief, I want to tell you, is not what they show in the movies. It's not one big cry and then you're standing in the rain looking at a headstone and then the music swells and you move on. Grief is going to the grocery store and standing in the cereal aisle for 11 minutes because Patrick used to buy Honey Nut Cheerios, and now there's a box of Honey Nut Cheerios on the shelf looking at you like it wants something and you don't know whether to buy it or walk away. And both options make you want to sit down on the linoleum. Grief is opening the medicine cabinet and his deodorant is still there. Old Spice, the original, not the new scents. He was particular about that. It's still there because throwing it away feels like a second funeral and leaving it there feels like a shrine, and neither option is sane, but you're not really sane right now anyway, so you just close the cabinet and wash your face and go to work. Grief turns you into a woman who owns 6 black cardigans, who eats cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row, who falls asleep on the couch at 8:30 and wakes up at 2 in the morning and for one merciful half second forgets that anything has changed, and then remembers. And the remembering is the worst part. Not the knowing, the re-knowing. Over and over again, every single morning. 5 weeks of that. 5 weeks of re-knowing. And then Dolores decided her family dinner was the right venue to drop a grenade into what was left of my chest. But here's the thing, and this is where the story turns. Patrick was not a monster. I want to be very clear about that. He was kind and he was funny, and he was imperfect in the specific ways that most real people are imperfect. He was also not a saint. And what he did 14 months before he died is the reason I was sitting at that gay restaurant with my hands flat on the table and a smile on my face while his mother tried to take my house. Because 14 months before Patrick died, I learned something about him that cracked the foundation of our marriage. And when a foundation cracks, a smart woman doesn't pretend it didn't happen. She doesn't just patch over it and hope for the best. A bookkeeper audits. There's a specific kind of betrayal that doesn't come with yelling or slamming doors. It comes with a receipt from a bar you've never been to and a text message that wasn't meant for you. 14 months before Patrick died, on a Saturday morning in April, I was sorting through the laundry because that's what I do on Saturday mornings. I sort laundry. I separate colors from whites. I check pockets. I am a woman of systems. And in the front pocket of Patrick's jeans, folded once, was a receipt from a bar in Germantown called the Copper Fiddle. 2 old fashions, 1 glass of rosé. A Saturday night I thought he had spent at his buddy Kevin's watching the Titans game. I stood in the laundry room holding that receipt for a long time. The dryer was running. I could feel it vibrating through the floor. The receipt was dated the previous Saturday, and the total was $47, and the rosé was not for Patrick because Patrick did not drink rosé. Patrick drank bourbon and the occasional beer when he was being responsible and water when he was being virtuous, which was approximately twice a year in January. The rosé was for somebody else. I did what any person would do. I looked at his phone, not proud of it, not ashamed of it either. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, and I picked it up and I typed in the code, which was the same code he had used for 6 years, because Patrick was not a man who changed his passwords, and I found a thread of text messages with someone named Jolene. I'm not going to give you the details of those messages because they're not yours, and honestly, they're not really mine anymore either. What I will tell you is that they were enough. They were clear. They painted a picture that did not require interpretation. Patrick had been seeing a bartender named Jolene at a place across town from his restaurant. It had been going on for about 5 weeks. It was not love. I could tell it was not love because love texts differently than whatever this was. This was something smaller and dumber and sadder than love. I sat at the kitchen table. Patrick was still asleep. It was 7:45 in the morning and the house was quiet, except for the dryer thumping in the other room and a cardinal outside the window doing its two-note song over and over, like it was trying to warn me about something I had already figured out. When Patrick came downstairs, I was sitting at the table with 2 cups of coffee. His was black, mine had cream. I set his phone between us, screen up, messages open. We had a very long Saturday. I'll spare you the details of that too. Not because they're private, although they are, but because every couple that has been through this knows what that Saturday sounds like. The talking, the silence, the talking again. The part where he says it didn't mean anything, and the part where you want to scream that makes it worse, not better, because if it didn't mean anything, then you blew up our life for nothing. He ended it. That day, I watched him send the message. He showed me the screen. It was over. Here's where we diverge from the usual story. We didn't go to therapy. I know. Everyone goes to therapy. Every article says go to therapy. Every podcast says go to therapy. We didn't. What we did instead was we took a long weekend to the Smoky Mountains about a month later. We rented a cabin with a porch that overlooked a creek, and we sat on that porch, and we didn't talk about Jolene, and we didn't talk about the receipt, and we didn't talk about any of it. We just sat there, together, listening to the water. And then we came home and we started cooking dinner together every night, which we hadn't done in 2 years. Tuesday became pasta night. Thursday was whatever Patrick felt like experimenting with, which was usually some variation of a dish he'd seen at the restaurant that week and wanted to try at home, and which was usually about 60% successful and 40% were ordering pizza. We rebuilt. Not perfectly, not like a movie, like 2 real people who decided that the thing they had was worth keeping even though it had a crack in it, and it was worth keeping. But here's the thing about cracks. A crack doesn't go away just because you stop looking at it. And I am a bookkeeper. I don't stop looking at things. I look harder. About 3 months after the Smoky Mountains trip, after things had settled, after we had stopped holding our breath around each other, I sat down at my desk one evening while Patrick was at work, and I opened every single financial document we had. Bank statements, mortgage papers, insurance policies, retirement accounts, beneficiary designations, tax returns, every piece of paper with a number on it. And I reorganized. The house was already in my name. I had purchased it in 2016 with savings I had built up through my first 5 years working after college, plus a small amount my grandmother left me. Patrick was never on the deed. He had signed the spousal waiver at closing and made a joke about it being my castle. The mortgage was mine. The insurance was mine. $312,000 still owed. The life insurance policy, $500,000. I updated the beneficiary designation. Nora Callahan, 100%, non-probate, contractual transfer. Goes where the contract says it goes. The 401k, $280,000. Same thing. Beneficiary designation, Nora Callahan, federal law, ERISA, look it up. It does not care about state probate courts. It does not care about family dinners. The joint savings account, $47,000. Held as joint tenants with right of survivorship. If one of us dies, the other gets it automatically. 1 form, 1 signature. I didn't do any of this out of spite. I want you to hear that clearly. I did not sit at that desk and think, I'm going to punish him. I sat at that desk and I thought, the numbers lied to me once. I am going to make sure they never lie to me again. Not out of spite, out of arithmetic. Because once the numbers lie to you once, you learn to read them differently. And I read everything, every line, every clause, every beneficiary box on every form. I read it all and I made sure that if anything ever happened, if the ground shifted again for any reason, I would be standing on solid floor. I didn't know then that the ground was going to shift in the worst possible way 5 months later on a Tuesday night on Route 40. But I was ready. And that is why, 5 weeks after my husband's funeral, I was sitting at a barbecue restaurant watching his mother announce that she was going to take my house. And I didn't flinch. I drove home from that dinner. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not pull over on the shoulder of Interstate 40 and break down. I drove home in my 2018 Camry, the one with a scratch on the passenger door from the time Patrick tried to parallel park at a Cracker Barrel and misjudged the distance by approximately the width of my entire vehicle. I pulled into my driveway. I sat in the car for 9 minutes with the engine off, listening to the tick of hot metal cooling. Then I went inside. I kicked off my shoes. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon in a coffee mug because I couldn't be bothered to find a proper glass. And I walked into Patrick's old office and opened the filing cabinet. Here's what nobody at that dinner table knew. Here's what Dolores, bless her good purse, did not know. Here's what Jolene, wherever she was that night, did not know. And here's what Boyd Mercer, a man I had not yet had the misfortune of encountering, absolutely did not know. I sat in Patrick's office, his old office. The small room at the end of the hallway that we had always called the office, even though it was technically the second bedroom, and had never contained anything resembling professional furniture until Patrick dragged in a desk from a garage sale in Inglewood and declared it his command center. The room still smelled like him, Old Spice, the original formula, not the new ones with the names that sound like energy drinks. Patrick had opinions about deodorant the way some men have opinions about football. Strongly held. Non-negotiable. There was a half-empty stick of it in the top drawer of his dresser in our bedroom, and I hadn't moved it, and I wasn't going to move it, and if that makes me a certain kind of person, then I am that kind of person, and I have made my peace with it. His desk was exactly how he left it, a coffee mug with a faded Titans logo holding 3 pens, 2 of which didn't work, a stack of restaurant supply catalogs he was never going to read, a framed photo of us at the Smoky Mountains cabin, the one where I'm laughing and he's making a face behind me that I didn't notice until we got the prints back. A half-empty sleeve of peppermints, the red and white kind, the ones that come in the crinkly cellophane wrappers. He kept them in the top drawer like a grandfather. He was 38 years old and he kept peppermints in his desk drawer, and I loved him for it, and I missed him so much in that moment that my ribs ached. I opened my laptop. I opened the spreadsheet. Let me walk you through what Dolores Callahan had just declared war on, because I think you'll appreciate the math. The house, my house, purchased in 2016 under my name only. Down payment from my premarital savings, built up through 5 years of full-time work after college, plus $11,000 from my grandmother's estate. Mortgage in my name alone. Patrick signed the spousal waiver at closing. He was never on the deed. He never asked to be. Current balance owed, $298,400. Every penny of that obligation is mine. The property taxes are mine. The insurance is mine. The leaky faucet in the guest bathroom that Patrick promised to fix for 2 years is mine. The house is mine. The life insurance policy, $500,000. Beneficiary designation, Nora Callahan, 100%. This is a non-probate asset. That means it does not pass through the will. It does not go through probate court. It is a contract between the insurance company and the named beneficiary. It goes where the paper says it goes. No judge in the state of Tennessee can reroute it. No mother-in-law in a good purse can reroute it either. The 401k, $280,000 give or take. Beneficiary designation, Nora Callahan. Federal law governs this one, ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. I want you to hear that date, 1974. This law has been on the books for over 50 years. It does not care what Dolores announced at a barbecue restaurant. It does not care about sweet tea speeches. It does not care about matriarchs. The joint savings account at First Horizon, $47,000. Held as joint tenants with right of survivorship. When one account holder dies, the funds transfer automatically to the surviving holder. I signed a single form. It took 8 minutes. Less time than it takes to order at a drive-thru. So, let's talk about what is actually in the probate estate. Let's talk about what a court could, theoretically, in the most generous possible interpretation of Tennessee probate law, poke a stick at. Patrick's individual checking account at Regions Bank, balance at time of death, $6,340. That's it. That is the entire kingdom Dolores Callahan stood up in a barbecue restaurant and declared herself the matriarch of $6,340. Which means when Dolores, in her good purse and her rehearsed pauses, announced that she was going to take half of everything, What she was actually announcing was that she intended to go to war over $3,170 of Patrick's solo checking account, minus the legal fees required to fight for it, which would be, and I am being conservative, roughly 8 to 12 times that amount. I sat back in Patrick's chair. The chair squeaked. It had always squeaked. He had been meaning to oil it. He never oiled it. I was never going to oil it either because every time it squeaked it sounded like him shifting his weight while he watched YouTube videos about motorcycle maintenance at 11 o'clock at night, and that sound was worth more to me than a silent chair. I picked up my coffee mug. The bourbon was still warm. I took a sip. I want you to understand something. I did not feel triumph in that moment. I did not feel smug. I did not feel victorious. What I felt, sitting at my dead husband's desk, surrounded by his peppermints and his broken pens and the faint ghost of Old Spice, was tired. Just tired. Because I knew what was coming. I knew Dolores was not going to back down just because she was factually, legally, and mathematically incorrect. Dolores had been an office manager for 26 years. She had once argued with a FedEx driver for 30 minutes about a package that turned out to be at the right address the entire time, and she won that argument. I don't know how. The package was where it was supposed to be, and she still won. This woman was not going to look at a spreadsheet and say, "Oh, you're right, my mistake, pass the cobbler." She was going to push. She was going to push hard. She was going to push for months. And I was going to have to live through it while also somehow continuing to function as a human being, a bookkeeper and a woman who still couldn't walk past the cereal aisle without her chest tightening. I finished the bourbon. I closed the laptop. I looked at the photo of us at the Smoky Mountains. "All right, Dolores," I said out loud to nobody. And I went to bed. The phone rang 3 days later. It was Jolene. I know. I stared at the screen for a solid 10 seconds. Her name was still saved in my phone. Don't ask me why. It was a leftover from 14 months ago when I had typed it in during one of those late-night spirals where you Google a person's name and then their Instagram and then their workplace, and then you realize you've been sitting in bed for 45 minutes learning about a stranger's life, and you feel sick, and you close the phone and you go brush your teeth and you don't delete the contact because some part of you thinks you might need it someday. I was right, apparently. I answered. "Nora?" Her voice was small. The kind of small that a person's voice gets when they've been coached on what to say, but haven't been coached on how to feel while saying it. "Hey, Jolena. I'm so sorry to call. Dolores gave me your number," she said. "She said you'd want to talk about Rosie. About Patrick. She said you'd want to do right by his daughter." I closed my eyes. Of course, Dolores had given her my number. Dolores had not only detonated the bomb at dinner, she had handed Jolene the matches on the way out and told her to keep throwing. "Jolene," I said, "if Patrick had a daughter, he would want her taken care of. Do you have paternity confirmation?" Silence. The kind of silence that answers the question before the words do. Dolores said we didn't need that. She said it would be disrespectful. Disrespectful. To confirm, with a simple cheek swab, the single factual claim upon which this entire campaign was built. Disrespectful. I did not laugh. I wanted to. I did not. "I see," I said. "Jolene, I'm going to let you go now. My attorney will be in touch." I hung up. I sat in the kitchen. I thought, my attorney. What a funny phrase, considering I am not a lawyer. I am a bookkeeper. I don't have an attorney. I have a calculator and a filing cabinet and a very organized system of color-coded folders. But Jolene didn't need to know that yet. The letter arrived the following Wednesday. I want to describe this letter to you because I have been doing accounting for 12 years. I have read contracts. I have read tax notices. I have read demand letters from the IR that would make a grown man weep. And this letter was, in the professional assessment of a woman who reads documents for a living, a work of performance art. It came in a manila envelope. The return address was printed on a sticker that had been applied crooked, not slightly crooked, visibly, aggressively crooked. The kind of crooked that suggests the person applying it was either in a hurry or did not own a flat surface. The letterhead read, "Boyd Mercer, Esquire, Attorney at Law, Estate and Family Matters. Se habla español." There was a small graphic in the upper left corner that I believe was intended to be the scales of justice, but which looked more like two frying pans on a seesaw. The address was a suite on the second floor of a building in Germantown. I will come back to this address shortly because it deserves its own paragraph. Inside the envelope was a 2-page letter, single-spaced, in a font that I need you to prepare yourself for. Comic Sans. I am going to say that again because I want to make sure you heard me. A demand letter. Regarding the estate of a dead man. Typed in Comic Sans. The font of birthday party invitations and elementary school newsletters. The font that the entire legal profession has collectively agreed should never appear on any document more serious than a grocery list, and Boyd Mercer Esquire had chosen it for a legal threat. I sat at my kitchen table. I picked up my red pen. Pilot G2, 0.7 millimeter. I keep a pack of 12 in my desk drawer. I have kept a pack of 12 in my desk drawer since college. Don't judge me. A good pen is a good pen. I read. The letter informed me that Mr. Mercer represented Miss Jolene and minor child Rosie in the matter of the estate of Patrick Callahan. Callahan, with an H-I in the middle. My last name is Callahan. Callahan. It is on my mailbox. It is on my tax returns. It is on the death certificate of the man whose estate this letter was allegedly about. Boyd Mercer could not spell the name of his own client's alleged father. I circled it. In red, I moved on. The letter demanded equitable distribution of 50% of all marital assets, real and personal, to said minor child in trust, with Miss Jolene as natural guardian. It then used the phrase hereditary equity provision. I put my pen down. I picked it up again. I read it one more time. Hereditary equity provision. I want to be very clear with you. That is not a legal term. That is not a Tennessee statute. That is not a concept that exists in any law book, in any jurisdiction in the United States of America, including, I suspect, fictional ones. Hereditary equity provision is words. Those are words arranged in the approximate shape of a legal concept, the way a toddler arranges blocks in the approximate shape of a castle. There is no castle. There are just blocks. I circled it twice. In red, I kept reading. On page 2, the letter referenced the term fiduciary. I stared at it. Fiduciary. Fiduciary is a word that every lawyer, every accountant, every financial professional uses constantly. It is the backbone of our work. It is, and I'm not being dramatic, one of the first words you learn in any business program in the country. If you cannot spell fiduciary and you are sending a letter demanding half of a dead man's estate, there is something happening here that requires investigation. I put the letter down. I picked up my phone. I opened the Tennessee Board of Professional Responsibility website. I typed in Boyd Mercer. One result. License status, active. Registered address, Germantown, Tennessee. Areas of practice listed, insurance and annuities. Insurance and annuities. Not estate law. Not probate, not family law. Insurance and annuities. Boyd Mercer was a lawyer, the way a Swiss Army knife is a saw. Technically it says so on the label, but you would not use it to cut down a tree. I then did something I should not admit to doing, but I am going to tell you anyway because we are past the point of dignity. I opened Google Maps. I typed in his office address. I switched to Street View. I zoomed in. Boyd Mercer Esquire, attorney at law, estate and family matters, se habla español, operated out of a second-floor office above a laundromat called Suds and Spin in a strip mall in Germantown, Tennessee. The unit to the left was a tax preparation service that appeared to be closed permanently. The unit to the right was a nail salon called Tips by Tammy, with a handwritten sign in the window that read "Walk-ins welcome" with 3 exclamation points. The exclamation points were Tammy's, not mine. I sat at my kitchen table. I looked at the letter. I looked at the street view. I looked at the ceiling. Dolores Callahan had hired a man whose primary legal experience was selling whole life policies to retirees at kitchen tables, a man who could not spell the name on the death certificate, a man who cited laws that do not exist, a man who used Comic Sans on legal correspondence. And she had given him my address. I picked up my red pen, I capped it, I set it down, and for the first time in 5 weeks, I almost laughed. I called Willa. Because when the world hands you a letter written in Comic Sans by a man who operates above a laundromat, you call Willa. Willa Tran has been my best friend since we both worked the overnight audit shift at a Holiday Inn Express off Interstate 40 during college. That's a bond you cannot replicate. Two 20-year-olds sitting behind a front desk at 3 in the morning, eating vending machine Doritos and reconciling the day's guest folios, while a man in room 212 called down every 45 minutes to ask if the pool was open. The pool was not open. It was 3 in the morning. It was November. The pool had been closed since September. He called 7 times. We told him 7 times. He called an 8th time, and Willa answered and said, "Sir, the pool is frozen and there is a raccoon in it," and he did not call again. That is the kind of woman Willa is. Direct, creative, unshakable. She is now a paralegal at a firm in Memphis. Family law, mostly. Custody disputes. Divorces. The kind of work that requires you to read terrible things people say about each other in sworn declarations and then go home and feed your cats and act like you didn't just spend 8 hours wading through the worst of human behavior. Her cats are named Debit and Credit. She named them that on purpose. She thought it was funny. It is funny. It is also deeply telling about the kind of person she is. Willa is also in her 2nd year of law school at night, the University of Memphis. She goes to class 3 evenings a week after working full-time, and she studies on weekends, and she is, by every measure I can think of, the most relentlessly determined person I have ever known. She will be a lawyer by next spring. God help everyone who has to face her in court. "Hey," I said when she picked up, "I need you to hear something." "Go." I read her the hereditary equity provision sentence, word for word, in my flattest, most professional bookkeeper voice. Silence on the other end. Then I heard her inhale through a straw. Willa drinks iced coffee the way other people breathe oxygen. It is a permanent extension of her hand. I have never seen her without one. I suspect she sleeps with one on the nightstand. The inhale was followed by a noise I can only describe as a seal being surprised by a wave. Then I heard the coffee hit, what I am fairly certain was her keyboard. Then I heard her say a word that I will not repeat on this channel, but which rhymed with truck. Nora. Yes, who wrote that? Boyd Mercer, Esquire. Who? Boyd Mercer, Esquire, of Germantown, Tennessee. Nora, I need you to look this man up right now. I already did. He's real. He has a license. He specializes in insurance and annuities. She was quiet for 3 seconds. Willa is never quiet for 3 seconds. Insurance and annuities. Yes, and he wrote a demand letter about a probate estate. Yes, in Comic Sans. In Comic Sans. Nora. Yes. Please tell me more. Please tell me everything. This is the most fun I've had all month. I told her everything. The dinner, Dolores' speech, the sweet tea glass, the rehearsed pauses, Francine toasting an empty chair, the letter, Callahan, with an H.I., the fiduciary, the frying pan scales of justice, suds and spin, tips by Tammy. Willa listened without interrupting, which is unusual for her. When I finished, she was quiet again. Then she said something that I needed to hear more than I realized. Nora, she doesn't have a case. You understand that, right? Not even close. Not even in the same zip code as a case. Walk me through it. The house is in your name, non-marital property. She can't touch it. The life insurance is beneficiary designated, non-probate. It's a contract, goes straight to you. No court can redirect it. The 401k is governed by ERISA, which is federal, Nora, not state. Dolores could hire every estate attorney in Tennessee, and it would not matter because a federal statute does not care about a sweet tea speech at a barbecue restaurant. I know. The joint savings transferred by operation of law, survivorship. Done. You signed the form. It's yours. I know. So the only thing sitting in probate is his checking account. $6,340. She went quiet again. Nora. Yeah. She's going to war over $3,000. $3,170. If we're splitting it down the middle. Nora. I know. Okay, but here's the thing. She's going to fight longer now. You know that, right? Dolores is not going to look at the numbers and walk away. She's going to hear the word beneficiary and she's going to think there's a loophole. There's always a woman like Dolores who thinks there's a loophole. I know. So what's the play? I leaned back in my kitchen chair. I looked at the ceiling. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner shaped vaguely like the state of Kentucky. Patrick and I used to argue about whether it was worth repainting. He said yes. I said it adds character. The stain is still there. It does add character. I was right. I let her commit, I said. I let her put everything in writing. I let her lawyer send his Comic Sans letters and cite his imaginary laws. I let Dolores tell the family whatever she wants to tell them. I don't respond. I don't react. I don't fight, I just collect. Collect what? Everything. Every letter, every voicemail, every lie she tells Shannon, every promise she makes to Jolene. And when she's committed so far that she can't back out without losing face in front of the entire family, I walk into a room with 3 things. What 3 things? I don't know yet, but I'll know. When it's time, I'll know. Willa was quiet for a long moment. I could hear debit or credit, I can never tell which one, meowing in the background. One of them had probably knocked over the iced coffee that was no longer on the keyboard because it was on the floor. What about the baby, she said. The paternity question. That's the first thing I need to answer. If Rosie is Patrick's, this is one conversation. If she's not, it's a very different one. How are you going to find out? I'm going to meet Jolene, in person, in a public place, with you sitting across from me taking notes. Me? You. You're my witness. You're my chain of custody. You're my friend who happens to be a paralegal, who happens to have access to legal databases, and who happens to be the most terrifyingly organized person I've ever met. Willa laughed. Not a big laugh, the kind of laugh that comes right before a woman agrees to do something that is going to consume her weekends for the next 2 months. Nora Callahan. What? I am so proud of you. Thank you. Also, you are a little bit terrifying. Thank you. We hung up. I sat at my kitchen table. I looked at the Boyd Mercer letter sitting on the table next to my red pen and my empty coffee mug that had recently contained bourbon. I looked at the water stain shaped like Kentucky, and for the first time since Patrick died, I did not feel tired. I felt something else. Something colder and quieter than anger, more patient than revenge. Something that sits in the chest of a woman who counts things for a living and has just realized that every single number is on her side. I don't have a word for that feeling, but I think bookkeepers probably invented it. Aunt Francine called me on a Thursday at 2:15 in the afternoon. That alone should have been a 5-alarm fire. Francine does not call people on Thursdays. Francine operates on a very specific social schedule that involves Sunday phone calls after church, Wednesday texts containing forwarded memes about wine, and the occasional holiday voicemail in which she narrates what she's cooking while Wheel of Fortune plays in the background. A Thursday at 2:15 was off pattern, and I am a bookkeeper. I notice patterns the way a dog notices a squirrel, automatically, involuntarily, with my whole body. But I was tired. I was sitting at Patrick's desk working on the motorcycle title transfer, which is a sentence that should not make a person cry, but which had made me cry twice that morning, because the form asked for the owner's signature, and the owner was dead, and the line was just sitting there, blank, waiting for a hand that was never coming back. So when Francine called, I answered, because I was tired and sad and not thinking clearly, and those 3 things together are the reason people say things they shouldn't. Nora, sweetie, how are you holding up? I'm okay, Francine, just paperwork. I know, honey. Listen, Dolores is worried. We're all worried. She's just concerned about the baby, about Rosie. She wants to make sure Patrick's little girl is taken care of. And she mentioned that Patrick had one of those retirement accounts, the 401k. She said it was quite a lot of money in there. A pause I should have recognized. A pause I should have heard, the way you hear the click before a trap snaps shut. But I didn't. Because the motorcycle title was sitting in front of me with that blank signature line. Because Francine's voice sounded like concern and not like reconnaissance, and I am apparently capable of being fooled by a 75-year-old woman who once got lost in her own neighborhood Walgreens. The 401k isn't part of the probate estate, Francine, I said, calmly, patiently. In my professional voice, it has a beneficiary designation. It doesn't pass through the will. That's federal law. Silence. Oh, she said. Well, that's very interesting. And I heard it. In the space between interesting and the next breath, the sound of information being cataloged, filed, prepared for delivery. Francine was not asking because she was concerned. Francine had been sent. "Well, that's good to know, sweetie." "Okay, I'll let you go." Click. I put the phone down. I looked at the ceiling. I said a word I am not allowed to say on this channel. I said it 3 times with increasing emphasis. Then I counted, because that's what I do. I counted the minutes it would take for Francine to call Dolores and hand my mother-in-law a bigger target. Within 2 hours, and I mean literally 2 hours, I checked the timestamp because that is who I am as a human being. Dolores was calling my phone. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 16 minutes long. 16 minutes. The average TED Talk is 18 minutes, and those people rehearse for weeks. Dolores delivered 16 minutes of unrehearsed monologue, and I suspect she only stopped because her phone ran out of recording time. I listened to the first 2 minutes. That was enough. She informed me she had spoken with Francine, that she now understood there was a significant retirement account, that she also knew about the life insurance, which she called the policy, drawing the word out like she had uncovered it through her own detective work, and not through her sister calling me on a fake welfare check. Her attorney, Boyd Mercer of Suds and Spin fame, would be pursuing all available assets. She said that phrase 3 times. I counted. She had found her bigger pot. Dolores now believed there was $500,000 in insurance and $280,000 in retirement savings with her dead son's name on it. She couldn't touch any of it, not legally, not in this reality, but she was going to try. And trying was going to be loud and long and make the next few months significantly harder than they needed to be. I called Willa. I did a dumb thing. Tell me. I told her everything. The Francine call, the slip, the 16-minute voicemail. When I finished, Willa was quiet for a moment. Then she said what Willa always says when the situation is bad but not fatal. "It's fine. It changes very little. She still can't touch the insurance. She still can't touch the 401k ERISA. Does not care about Dolores Callahan's feelings." "I know, but she'll fight longer now." "Yes, she will. So what? Let her fight. Let her spend money on Boyd Mercer. Let her leave 16-minute voicemails until her phone catches fire. None of it changes the numbers. The numbers are the numbers." Willa was right. She is almost always right. It is one of her most annoying and most comforting qualities simultaneously. "There's something else," I said. "Her lawyer can't spell fiduciary. He cites laws that don't exist. He uses Comic Sans." "Nora, you have to not tell her that. You have to let that cook. A woman who hires a lawyer who uses Comic Sans and cites imaginary statutes, that is a gift from the universe directly to you. You do not unwrap that gift early. You let it sit under the tree." I laughed, a small laugh, dark, the kind of laugh you do when you know something the other person doesn't and they are spending real money to not find out. "One more thing," I said. She told Jolene her lawyer said something in Latin that was very important and legally binding. Silence. Then a sound I can only describe as Willa's soul leaving her body through her nose. "Nora, the man cannot spell fiduciary. He is not going to be saying anything in Latin. The man is going to mispronounce habeas corpus." I laughed so hard I put the phone down on the desk. It was a real laugh, the kind that hurts because your body has forgotten how to do it. Grief makes you forget you have a diaphragm. It hurt. It was wonderful. I needed it more than the bourbon. When I could breathe, I picked the phone back up. "Willa, I'm going to let her commit in writing, in front of witnesses, and then I'm going to let her find out the expensive way who she hired. Nora Callahan, you are becoming a very dangerous woman." "I know. Good night, Willa." "Good night. Go to bed. Stop counting things." I hung up. I did not go to bed. I did not stop counting things. I am a bookkeeper. Counting things is not something I stopped doing. It is something I am. Here's a thing that happened that I didn't expect. I was standing in my kitchen 2 nights later making a grilled cheese, because when your entire life is collapsing, a grilled cheese is the last reliable institution. Politicians will fail you. Banks will fail you. Your mother-in-law will absolutely fail you. A grilled cheese, if you use real butter and medium heat and you don't walk away from the pan, will not fail you. I had the bread in the skillet, I had the cheese on the bread, I had the butter doing exactly what butter is supposed to do. And my phone, sitting on the counter next to the stove, lit up with a voicemail notification. From Patrick. I need a second. Okay. Patrick had left me a voicemail 4 days before he died. I had never listened to it. I had seen it on my phone that afternoon, a Tuesday, while I was at work reconciling a shipping invoice that had a $14 discrepancy that I eventually tracked to a duplicate fuel surcharge, and I had thought, I'll listen to it when I get home. And then I got home, and I started dinner, and Patrick came home, and we ate together, and I forgot. And then 3 days later, there was no more forgetting because there was no more Patrick. The voicemail had been sitting on my phone for 6 weeks, unopened, unplayed. Just sitting there in the queue like a letter you keep meaning to open, but you're afraid of what's inside, so you put it on the counter and then you put the mail on top of it, and then a week goes by and it's still there under the electric bill and a coupon for oil changes. That night, whatever system runs these things, whatever algorithm decides when to remind you that the dead are still in your phone, pushed a notification like the voicemail was brand new. I don't know why. I don't know what triggered it. Technology is a cruel magician sometimes. It pulls things out of hats that should have stayed in hats. I stared at my phone. The grilled cheese was sizzling. The kitchen smelled like butter and bread, and the particular warmth that a stove gives off at 9:30 at night when the rest of the house is dark and you are the only person in it. I picked up the phone. I pressed play. Hey Nor, it's me. Weird shift tonight. Some guy proposed to his girlfriend at table 9, and she said no, and I had to comp their dessert. It was a chocolate lava cake. I felt bad for the guy. Anyway, remind me to give you something when I get home. It's in my jacket. I keep forgetting. Love you. Don't wait up, but I know you will. 28 seconds. I stood there. The grilled cheese was burning. I could smell it turning from golden to dark to something that was no longer food. I turned the burner off. I did that first. I turned the burner off because even in the middle of whatever was happening inside my chest, I am still a woman who turns burners off. That is apparently the last thing to go. The survival instincts, the practical reflexes, the muscle memory of being a person who does not burn her house down. I sat down on the kitchen floor. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I did not cry. What I did was sit on the cold tile with my back against the cabinet under the sink and my phone in my hand, and I listened to it again. Remind me to give you something when I get home. It's in my jacket. Again. It's in my jacket. I keep forgetting. Again. Love you. Don't wait up, but I know you will. What was in his jacket? What was he going to give me? What was the something? A note, a gift, a receipt for something he'd bought me. A candy bar from the gas station because he used to do that sometimes. Just grab a Snickers on the way home and leave it on my pillow like a hotel mint. I will never know. That sentence is going to live in my head until I am a very old woman sitting in a chair somewhere, and I will still be wondering what was in the jacket, and I will still not know. And that is a particular kind of grief that does not have a name. It is the grief of the unfinished sentence, the interrupted gesture, the thing someone was about to give you that got lost in the space between intention and arrival. The smoke alarm did not go off because I had turned the burner off in time, which is probably the only thing I did right that night. I sat on that floor for a long time. I don't know how long. I didn't count. That might be the first thing I hadn't counted in weeks. The next morning I went to the grocery store. I walked to the tea aisle. Patrick drank peppermint tea. Not coffee, not green tea. Peppermint tea, the kind in the green box with the little leaf on the front. He kept a box in the kitchen cabinet and a box in his office, and he drank it every night after dinner while he watched whatever he was watching on his phone, and I did the dishes, and we existed in the same room doing separate things. Together, which is what marriage actually is most of the time, not the grand gestures, the separate things together. I bought 12 boxes of peppermint tea. I don't drink peppermint tea. I have never in my life voluntarily consumed peppermint tea. It tastes like toothpaste that gave up halfway through. But I stood in that aisle and I put 12 boxes in my cart and I drove home and I put them in the cabinet next to the coffee filters. And I did not question it because questioning it would have required me to explain it to myself. Could not explain it to myself. I have 11 and a half boxes left. I will be drinking peppermint tea until I am old and gray and sitting in that chair still wondering what was in the jacket. Or until I learn to like it, whichever comes first. Some guy proposed to his girlfriend at table 9 and she said no. I think about that sometimes. I think about the chocolate lava cake. I think about Patrick standing there in his manager's polo comping a dessert for a man whose heart had just broken in public. I think about how Patrick's instinct in that moment was kindness, a free dessert, a small mercy for a stranger on the worst night of his life. That was Patrick. That was the man Dolores was building a fraud on top of. A man who comped chocolate lava cakes for strangers with broken hearts, and who kept peppermints in his desk like a grandfather, and who left a voicemail about a jacket and never came home to explain what was inside it. I got up off the kitchen floor eventually. I rinsed the ruined grilled cheese out of the pan. I poured the burnt butter down the drain. I made a new one, medium heat, real butter. I did not walk away from the pan. Shannon stopped taking my calls on a Monday. I tried her at lunch. Voicemail. I tried again after work. Voicemail. I tried a third time that evening, which I know is too many calls in one day, but Shannon is not the kind of woman who lets 3 calls from her widowed sister-in-law go unanswered. Shannon is the kind of woman who calls you back before your phone has stopped buzzing. She once called me back from the middle of a pediatric blood draw, one hand holding a needle, the other holding her phone. She whispered, "Can't talk. Tiny human. Call you in 10, and she called me in exactly 10 minutes. I timed it. Bookkeeper. By Wednesday, I understood why she had gone silent. Somebody had gotten to her. I knew who. I knew how. Dolores had spent the week working the phones. I could picture it. I could practically hear the script. She'd be sitting in her living room in Glendale, the one with the ceramic angel collection on the shelf above the television. The one where every surface has a doily, and every doily has a purpose that only Dolores understands, and she'd be calling person by person down her list. Poor Nora. She's not handling this well. She's being so difficult about Rosie. She's trying to cut the family out. She's refusing to acknowledge Patrick's own child. In God's eyes, that baby deserves half. In God's eyes, Nora is being selfish. Dolores had been an office manager for 26 years. She could schedule a conference call, manage a dispute between 2 agents, and reorganize a filing cabinet simultaneously. Manipulating her own daughter was a Tuesday. The calls started showing results by the second week. First Baptist Church, where Dolores had attended every Sunday for 31 years, and where she ran the annual chili cook-off with the organizational precision of a military campaign, began treating me differently. I noticed it at the grocery store when Linda Perkins, who sits 2 pews behind me, saw me in the produce section and suddenly became very interested in examining a cantaloupe from all angles, rather than saying hello. The book club, which Dolores had joined in 2019 and which met every other Thursday at rotating houses, became another transmission tower. Whatever Dolores was saying at those meetings was getting relayed across the neighborhood at a speed that made fiber optic internet look like carrier pigeons. Then the clients. I got a call from a small landscaping company I'd been doing books for on a contract basis. The owner, a nice enough guy named Pete, who had never once had a complaint about my work in 2 years, called me on a Tuesday morning and said, "Nora, we've decided to go in a different direction." I knew what direction. The direction was Dolores. I didn't ask. I just said, "I understand, Pete. Good luck." I hung up. I sat at my desk. I thought about how strange it is that a woman can lose her husband and then, piece by piece, lose the community that was supposed to catch her. Okay, hold on. Before I go any further, I want to stop and say something. Thank you. Really, the fact that you're here, listening to me unpack what is objectively the worst summer of my life, means more than you probably realize. If you've got a second, hit subscribe so I know you're sticking around. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Tell me what time it is there. I read every single one, and it keeps me going on the nights when the kitchen floor is cold and the peppermint tea tastes like regret. Okay, back to this mess. The one person who did not get the memo was Margine. Marjane Delacroix lives next door. She is 68 years old, widowed, relentlessly cheerful, and has the social boundaries of a golden retriever who has just discovered that the neighbors are home. She has 3 cats named Chairman Meow, Dolly Parton, and the notorious CAT. And if you think those names are ridiculous, you have never met Margine, Because Margine is a woman who commits fully to a bit. She rang my doorbell at 7:30 on a Wednesday morning, holding a Pyrex dish wrapped in foil. "Chicken King Ranch casserole," she said, beaming. "My mother's recipe. Eat it hot, eat it cold, either way it sticks to your ribs." I have eaten Margine's Chicken King Ranch casserole. It is a crime against at least 2 food groups and possibly a violation of the Geneva Conventions. The cheese layer alone could be used to patch a pothole. But you do not say that to a 68-year-old woman standing on your porch in a housecoat and slippers at 7:30 in the morning, holding the dish with both hands like she's presenting a newborn. "Thank you, Margine." "I heard about the dinner," she said. Her eyes had the particular gleam of a woman who has acquired gossip and intends to deploy it with the precision of a drone strike. Of course she had heard. Francine's cousin's hairdresser. The neighborhood information network in Nashville moves faster than any technology invented by man. "I also heard," she said, lowering her voice like we were exchanging state secrets across an international border, "that Dolores has been telling people at First Baptist that you are being difficult, that you're refusing to accept Patrick's daughter." I looked at Margine. Margine looked at me. Her 3 cats were visible through her front window, sitting in a row on the sill, watching us like a jury. "Margine," I said. "Yes, honey. Thank you for the casserole. You just let me know if you need anything, sweetheart, anything at all. Those women at that church don't know the half of it, and I intend to make sure they find out." I thanked her. I closed the door. I put the Chicken King Ranch casserole directly into the trash. I felt a little guilty. Then I felt less guilty. Then I opened my laptop, and I sat down at the kitchen table, and I started making a plan. Because Dolores could take my clients. She could take the church. She could take Shannon, at least for now, but she could not take the numbers. And the numbers were the only thing I needed. The plan was simple. Meet Jolene. Be kind. Bring Willa, and wait for a baby to do what babies do, which is drop things. I consulted Willa on the legal framework first because there is a right way and a lawful way, and I wanted both. Willa spent an evening pulling case law and Tennessee statutes on abandoned property in public spaces. The summary, which she texted me at 11:43 at night in a message that was 7 paragraphs long because Willa does not believe in brevity, boiled down to this. If a person leaves an item in a public place with no intent to retrieve it, and another party collects it after a reasonable period, that item may, under certain circumstances, be used for testing purposes. Documented chain of custody. Public setting. Witnesses. 15 minutes, Willa said. You wait 15 minutes after she leaves. Not 14, not 13, 15. I was very specific about the 15 minutes because I am the kind of person who follows instructions exactly, and because Willa had underlined the word 15 3 times in her text, which in Willa language is the equivalent of a notarized warning. I called Jolene on a Tuesday. I used what I privately think of as my professional sympathy voice, which is about half a step softer than my normal voice and comes with the phrase, "I understand," preloaded like a default setting. "Jolene, it's Nora. I've been thinking. I'd like to meet you and Rosie, properly, face to face. I think it's what Patrick would have wanted." I want you to know I said that sentence without flinching. What Patrick would have wanted, used by me, the widow. I am telling you, grief and betrayal combined have made me a better actress than anyone currently employed by daytime television. "Oh," Jolene said. "Oh, Nora, yes, that means so much. When?" We met at a coffee shop in Germantown. Neutral ground, public space, big windows. The kind of place that serves oat milk lattes and plays acoustic covers of songs that were better as originals. Willa was already seated when I arrived, legal pad on the table, iced coffee in hand, looking exactly like what she was, a paralegal who was about to document everything that happened in this room with the thoroughness of a nature documentary filmmaker. Jolene came in at 10 past 10 pushing a stroller. She was younger than I expected, 29, but she looked 24, tired. The kind of tired that lives in the skin under your eyes and doesn't leave no matter how much concealer you use. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt and sneakers that had seen better days, and she was carrying a diaper bag over one shoulder and her phone in her free hand, and she looked like exactly what she was. A young woman with a baby and not enough support and no idea what she had walked into. I felt something I did not expect. I felt sorry for her. Not a lot, not enough to change anything, but enough to notice, enough to file away in the part of my brain that keeps track of things that are going to matter later. Jolene. Hi, Nora, thank you for doing this. Dolores said you probably wouldn't. Of course Dolores said that. We sat. Jolene ordered a chai latte. I ordered black coffee. Willa ordered her 4th iced coffee of the day, which is not a number I am exaggerating. Rosie sat in the stroller and did the thing that babies do, where they look around a room like they are conducting a property assessment and finding everything mildly acceptable. I want to tell you about Rosie, because this is the part that makes the rest of it harder. Rosie was 8 months old. She had a round face and a tuft of dark hair on top of her head, and she was wearing a onesie that had a tiny strawberry on the front. She had one sock on and one sock off, because babies exist in a state of permanent asymmetry. She was holding a stuffed rabbit by one ear, and she was, and I want to be honest about this, a very cute baby. Babies are babies. They did not ask to be here. They did not ask to be the centerpiece of a 72-year-old woman's financial campaign. They did not ask for any of this. I held her. Jolene offered, and I accepted because saying no would have been suspicious, and also because I am a human being and she was a baby, and she reached for me with both hands, and what was I supposed to do? I bounced her on my knee. I made the face you make at babies. The one where you pretend to be shocked by something they did. She laughed. She grabbed my necklace. She drooled on my shirt. The conversation went nowhere productive, which I expected. Jolene repeated things that sounded like Dolores's words coming out of a younger mouth. Her attorney had a very strong case. The law was on their side. Patrick would have wanted Rosie taken care of. I nodded. I listened. I did not tell her that her attorney spelled her alleged child's father's name wrong. I did not tell her anything. I just listened. After about 40 minutes, Jolene started gathering her things. Rosie had gotten fussy. The diaper bag was overflowing. Her phone was buzzing. She stood up and she juggled the baby and the bag and her keys in the stroller, and in the process of doing what every mother of an infant does 17 times a day, which is carry more objects than any human being has hands for, she left Rosie's bottle on the table. She walked out. She did not come back. I looked at Willa. Willa looked at me. Willa's pen was already moving. I waited. I ordered a second coffee. I drank it slowly. I watched the clock on my phone. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12, 14, 15. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a Ziploc bag and a pair of nitrile gloves, both of which I had brought from home because Willa had been very specific in her 7-paragraph text about preparation. I picked up the bottle. I placed it in the bag. I sealed the bag. Willa, sitting across from me, documented the time, the location, the item, and the chain of custody on her legal pad and on her phone, where she had been taking time-stamped notes since we sat down. We drove to the lab in Memphis together, Willa's car. She had a cooler in the back seat that she had bought at a Target the day before, specifically for this purpose. The cooler still had the Target sticker on it. Inside was an ice pack and the Ziploc bag, and a form Willa had printed from the lab's website and pre-filled with everything except the date, which she wrote in the parking lot with a pen she kept behind her ear. I submitted the sample along with a comparison sample from Patrick, his toothbrush from the holder by the bathroom sink, his hairbrush from the top drawer of his dresser. Preserved in separate bags, documented by Willa, chain of custody clean. 10 to 14 business days, the intake technician said. I counted every single one of them. That's what bookkeepers do. We count things. Sometimes we count invoices. Sometimes we count days. Sometimes we count the number of lies a 72-year-old woman in a church cardigan has told in 7 weeks. I was up to 17. The lab called on a Tuesday. I want you to understand, I was having a good Tuesday. I had eaten breakfast. I had worn a blazer. I had gone to work and reconciled 3 client accounts without crying in the bathroom, which at that point in my life qualified as an Olympic performance. My phone rang at 2:47. Memphis area code. Miss Callahan, I'm so sorry. There was a clerical error. Your samples were mislabeled during processing. We'll need you to resubmit. I stood in the break room at work. I was holding a yogurt I had been about to eat, strawberry. I gripped it so hard the foil lid popped open and yogurt got on my thumb, and I did not notice for approximately 30 seconds. Mom? I'm here. "We're so sorry. We'll waive the fee, of course, if you can get us new samples." The sample came from a baby bottle that has been returned to its owner. The sample is gone. Oh dear. Is there another source you could... I hung up. I am not proud of hanging up. The lab technician did not personally mislabel my samples, but I hung up. I wiped the yogurt off my thumb with a paper towel. I threw the yogurt in the trash. I picked up my car keys. I drove to Kroger. I don't know why I drove to Kroger. I think when something breaks inside you and you don't know where to go, you go to the place that has the most aisles. Because aisles are organized. Aisles have labels. Aisles make sense in a way that the rest of the world does not. I bought a can of Pringles, sour, cream, and onion, and a bottle of Diet Dr. Pepper. And I walked back to my car and I sat in the driver's seat in the Kroger parking lot in the third row, from the entrance between a pickup truck and a minivan with a stick figure family on the back window, and I ate the entire can. Then I cried. Not a little. Not the polite kind where a single tear rolls down your cheek and you dab it with a tissue like a woman in a black and white movie. I cried the ugly kind. The kind where your face stops working. The kind where sounds come out of you that you did not know you were capable of making. The kind where your body decides it has been holding something for too long and it is going to let go of it right now whether you're ready or not, and you are not ready, and it does not care. I cried for 45 minutes. Dolly Parton was playing through the Bluetooth. I Will Always Love You, the original, not the Whitney version, which is a masterpiece in its own right, but the Dolly version, which is quieter and sadder, and comes from a place so deep and so plain-spoken that it sounds like a woman sitting on a porch telling you the truth about something she wishes weren't true. I sat there with Pringles crumbs on my blazer and Diet Dr. Pepper in the cup holder and Dolly Parton singing about love in my mascara, in places mascara is not designed to reach. I want you to know that until that afternoon, I did not believe it was physically possible for mascara to migrate to your ears. I stand corrected. It is possible. It happened. I have the blazer to prove it, and I have not worn it since. Somewhere during minute 30, between the second verse and the key change, Boyd Mercer's second letter arrived. Not physically. It had been delivered to my apartment mailbox earlier that day. I didn't read it until that evening. But I'm telling you about it now because the timing felt cosmically deliberate. The second letter informed me that if I did not respond to Mr. Mercer's demands within 10 business days, his client would be compelled to share her story with the local media. Specifically a blog called Nashville Neighbors Network, which I had never heard of but which apparently had a following among the over 60 set in the greater Nashville area. He was threatening to go to a neighborhood gossip blog with a story about the widow who refused to acknowledge her husband's child. I read that letter sitting on my couch at 9 o'clock at night. My mascara had been scrubbed off. My blazer was in the laundry. The Pringles can was in the recycling bin. I was wearing pajama pants and one of Patrick's old restaurant polo shirts that I had stolen from the closet and which smelled less like him every day, which is its own kind of grief that I am not going to unpack right now because I will lose it again, and I have already lost it once today in a Kroger parking lot, and that is my limit. I called Willa. I need you. I'm on my way. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask why. She just came, 50 minutes from Memphis in Friday traffic. She brought a bottle of bourbon, a legal pad, 2 pens, and a large pepperoni pizza, because Willa Tran understands a fundamental truth about crisis management, which is that you cannot plan a counterattack on an empty stomach. We sat at my kitchen table until 1 in the morning. The pizza box was open between us. The bourbon was in proper glasses this time. I had recovered enough dignity for glassware. Resubmit the test, Willa said. Call Jolene, tell her you want a family meeting. A real one. A brunch. Say it's for Rosie's sake. She'll come. She'll bring the baby. We'll get another sample. We do it again. Legally. Documented. Clean. Okay. The letter. You don't respond. You do nothing. Let him send his threats. Let him send 10 of them. You are going to pretend you are so overwhelmed with grief that you can barely function. Let Dolores think she's winning. Okay. And Nora. Yeah. You call a meeting. A formal one. When you're ready, you invite everyone. The whole family. You make Dolores think it's her moment. You let her walk in swinging. And then you walk in with 3 things. The 3 things. The 3 things. I reached across the table. I took her hand. Willa's hand was cold from holding the bourbon glass. Mine was warm from holding nothing. We sat like that for a minute. I didn't need to say anything. She knew. There's something about bottoming out in a Kroger parking lot with Dolly Parton singing about love while you're covered in Pringles dust and your mascara is in your ears that reorganizes your priorities. I don't recommend it. I also kind of do. Because after that night, I was not scared of Dolores anymore. I was not scared of Boyd. I was not scared of Nashville Neighbors Network or First Baptist Church or Francine or any of it. I was scared of one thing, but I didn't know what it was yet. 2 phone calls changed everything. Both came at night. Both involved crying. One made me furious. The other broke something in me I didn't know was still intact. The first call came on a Tuesday at 7:45 in the evening. Shannon. I almost didn't recognize her voice. Not because it had changed, but because Shannon does not cry. Shannon is a pediatric nurse. She holds screaming children steady while needles go into their arms. She has a voice made of steel and calm and the particular patience that comes from spending your professional life convincing small humans that everything is going to be okay. Shannon does not crack. Shannon was cracked. Catherine. Nora. Sorry. I'm sorry. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She was calling from her car. I could hear the engine running, the particular hum of a parking lot. She had pulled over somewhere, and I could tell from the way her breathing kept catching that she had been driving and having a feeling and had finally had to stop. Okay, I said. I sat down on my couch. I pulled a blanket over my legs even though it was July because sometimes when a conversation is about to get cold, you need something warm on your skin. Did my mother ever borrow money from you? I closed my eyes. No, Shannon. Never. She told me she did. She told me last year that she borrowed $20,000 from you and Patrick for her back surgery and that you'd been hounding her about it. She said that's why she didn't come to Thanksgiving. Shannon, your mother has not had back surgery. I know. I called her doctor. I made up an excuse. I called and asked about a follow-up appointment and the receptionist said there was no record of any procedure. There was no surgery, Nora. There was never any surgery. I know, honey. She's been borrowing from me for years. She told me she needed the money to pay you back, that you were threatening to take her to small claims court, that Patrick had begged her not to tell me because he was embarrassed. Oh, Shannon. I gave her $38,000, Nora. Over 3 years. In checks, in cash. Once I Venmo'd her $2,000 at 11 o'clock at night because she said her power was about to be shut off, and I was panicking and I didn't even think to check because she's my mother. She's my mother, Nora. She was crying, the real kind, the kind that comes from somewhere below the ribs. I let her cry. I did not try to fix it. I did not try to make it smaller. Some things need to be their full size before they can start getting better. When she could talk again, she said the rest. She told me you were lying about Rosie. She told me you were refusing to acknowledge Patrick's child because you were spiteful. She told me Patrick had told her before he died that he wanted to leave half of everything to Rosie and that you were blocking it out of jealousy. Shannon, yes. Has your mother ever shown you any evidence of any of this? Anything in writing from Patrick? A text? A voicemail? Anything? Long pause. No. Has she shown you a paternity test? No. Has she shown you anything from her lawyer? Any document at all that isn't a demand letter written in a font designed for children's birthday invitations? Shannon made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. The sound a woman makes when she sees something clearly for the first time after years of looking at it through fog. Oh my God, she said. Oh my God, Nora. I know. She got me a lawyer friend too, didn't she? Boyd something. She said he was very experienced. He is a real person, yes. He has a real license. He primarily sells life insurance. Oh my God. I know, honey. What do I do? You come to the meeting I'm going to call. You sit in the room. You listen. That's all. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said okay in a voice so small it barely registered. The second call came 3 nights later, 11:15. Private number. I was in bed. I was not asleep because I had not been asleep before midnight in approximately 2 months, but I was in bed, which is a different thing. Being in bed is a decision. Sleep is a negotiation. Nora? It's Jolyn. Her voice was different than at the coffee shop. Smaller, shakier, The voice of a person who is about to tell the truth for the first time in a long time and is terrified of what happens after. I need to tell you something. Go ahead. Dolores promised me 100. She stopped, corrected herself. $80,000. Silence. Mine. Deliberate. When the case settled, she said I'd get $80,000 up front from Patrick's accounts to cover Rosie's needs. She said her lawyer had arranged it. She said all I had to do was say the baby was Patrick's and show up when she told me to show up and she'd handle the rest. I walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I drank half of it. I set the glass down. I needed my hands to be doing something because the rest of me was doing everything it could to not say what I wanted to say. She gave me $2,500 last month, Jolene continued. Cash in an envelope. She said it was an advance. And she said if I didn't cooperate, she'd make sure people found out about my DUI from 3 years ago. She said she'd tell my landlord. She said she'd tell my boss. I took a breath. Jolene, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest, and I promise I will not be angry. Okay. Is Rosie Patrick's? Silence. The kind of silence that has a heartbeat. I could hear a baby monitor humming in the background and a refrigerator cycling on and somewhere outside a dog barking once and then stopping. I don't know. There was someone else around the same time. I always hoped it was Patrick. I wanted it to be Patrick. Patrick was nice to me. Patrick brought me soup once when I had a cold. The other one. He's not. He's not a good person. Jolene. I know. Dolores promised you $80,000. Yes. Jolene. Dolores does not have $80,000. Dolores does not have access to $80,000. Dolores has been borrowing money from her own daughter for 3 years to pay for cosmetic procedures and a timeshare in Gulf Shores, Alabama. The estate she told you was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars contains $6,340 in a checking account. I want you to sit with that. She started crying, quietly. Not the performative kind. The kind that leaks out when a person realizes the floor they've been standing on was never real. I'm so sorry, Nora. I know. I texted her an address. Saturday, 10 in the morning. Bring Rosie, bring Boyd if he'll come. Do not tell Dolores we talked. Okay. Okay. I hung up. I stood in my kitchen. I said out loud to nobody. Dolores Callahan promised a 29-year-old bartender $80,000 from an estate that legally contains $6,340. Ma'am. I called Jolene 2 days later. I had showered. I had put on a blazer even though I was not leaving the house for another 3 hours, because sometimes grief requires structural support, and a blazer is the closest thing I have to armor. I used what I privately call my mediation voice. It is approximately half an octave lower than my normal speaking voice, and it comes preloaded with the phrase, I understand, and a level of calm that does not reflect what is actually happening inside my chest. I developed it during tax season when clients call me panicking about numbers they don't understand. It works on panicking clients, it works on frightened bartenders, it would probably work on wild animals. Jolene, it's Nora. I've been thinking about what we talked about. I'd like to have a family brunch. A real one, with Rosie, so the family can meet her properly. I think that's what Patrick would have wanted. I said that sentence for the second time in my life without a single muscle in my face, betraying the fact that I was using my dead husband's memory as a tactical instrument. I am not proud of this. I am also not sorry. Oh, Jolene said. Oh, Nora, yes, absolutely. That means so much. We scheduled it for a Saturday at a brunch spot in Midtown Nashville. Open patio, public space. Waffles on the menu, which felt appropriate given the role Waffle House had played in my love story. The universe has a sense of humor. It is not always a kind one. Shannon came. She was not taking Dolores's calls anymore, but she came because I asked her to, and because something had shifted in her since the parking lot phone call. She hugged me at the door, quick, tight, wordless. The kind of hug that says, I'm sorry and I'm here and I should have picked up the phone and I know, all without a single syllable. Uncle Teddy came because Uncle Teddy will show up anywhere a person offers him breakfast. He brought a box of donuts from a place on Gallatin Road, which meant there were now donuts and waffles at the same table, and Teddy appeared to view this as a personal victory. Dolores did not come. Francine texted Shannon that Dolores felt the meeting was, and I am quoting directly, an emotional ambush designed by Nora to manipulate the family. I read that text aloud to Willa under the table, and Willa wrote the word irony on her legal pad and underlined it twice. Jolene arrived 10 minutes late pushing the stroller. Rosie was wearing a little yellow dress with ducks on it and was in the process of removing one shoe with the focused determination of a person defusing a bomb. Jolene sat in the chair I had saved for her. She did not look at the empty space where Dolores would have been. She looked at me. I nodded. She sat down. I held Rosie again. She grabbed my earring this time instead of my necklace, which I took as a sign of personal growth on her part. I bounced her on my knee. I wiped her mouth with a napkin when she drooled, which she did approximately every 40 seconds because she was a baby, and that is what babies do. The napkin went into the Ziploc bag under the table. Willa, sitting across from me, documented the time and the item on her phone with the quiet efficiency of a woman who has done this before and is frankly getting good at it. Was it strange? Yes. Was it legal? Willa's 7-paragraph text said yes. Was I going to have a complicated conversation with myself about it later? Absolutely. But later was later and right now was right now. The brunch ended. Jolene left. Shannon left. Teddy took the remaining donuts, which surprised no one. Willa and I sat in the parking lot in her car with the engine running and the Ziploc bag in the cooler in the back seat, the same Target cooler from last time. And she said, "Different lab this time. I know a place in Murfreesboro. My cousin's girlfriend works in their billing department. She can get us bumped to rush processing. 9 business days." While I waited, I did what I do when I don't know what else to do. I audited. I sat at Patrick's desk on a Wednesday evening with a cup of peppermint tea that I was learning to tolerate, if not enjoy, and I pulled every financial record I could find. Not just ours, Dolores's. Because when a woman has been borrowing $38,000 from her daughter and promising $80,000 to a stranger and hiring a lawyer from a laundromat, there is a trail. There is always a trail. Numbers leave footprints. And I am a woman who reads footprints. I found the first thing in Patrick's old credit report, a credit line, $67,000, opened 3 years ago under his name, Patrick's name, his social security number, his date of birth. But the billing address was not our house. The billing address was a P.O. box in Germantown. I looked up the P.O. box. It was registered to Dolores Callahan. I sat very still. The peppermint tea was getting cold. The room smelled like Old Spice and peppermints and something else now, something that tasted like metal in the back of my throat. My mother-in-law had opened a $67,000 credit line in her dead son's name, while he was alive, without his knowledge, using his identity. That is not a family dispute. That is a felony. I kept digging. 2 hours later, I found the second thing. Dolores's tax returns, copies of which Patrick had kept in a folder because Dolores had asked him to co-sign a lease 5 years ago, and Patrick had asked to see her financials first. She had claimed Patrick as a dependent for 2 consecutive years. 2 years after he had married me. 2 years after he had filed jointly with his wife. She had claimed her adult married son as a dependent on her federal income tax return. That is also, in case you were wondering, a crime. I closed the laptop. I sat in Patrick's chair. The chair squeaked. I didn't feel triumph. I felt sad. So deeply, specifically sad. Sad for Rosie, who did not ask for any of this. Sad for Jolene, who wanted Patrick to be the father because Patrick was kind and the other one was not. Sad for Patrick, who never knew that his own mother had built a house of fraud on top of his name while he was alive, and a campaign of lies on top of his grave after he was gone. Sad for Shannon, who had given $38,000 to a woman who had been stealing from her brother. Then my phone buzzed. Email from the lab. I opened it. Probability of paternity. 0.0%. Exclusion confirmed. I closed the laptop. I printed the results 3 times in color on the good paper. The heavy stock from the second shelf in the office closet that I normally reserve for year-end client reports. I put them in the manila folder labeled Callahan D. 3rd drawer down, behind the peppermints. 6 days until the meeting. Margine Delacroix rang my doorbell on a Sunday afternoon carrying a plate of lemon bars that were, and I want to be completely fair here, actually exceptional, golden on top. Powdered sugar dusted like a first snow. The kind of lemon bars where you bite into them and something in your brain goes quiet for a second because your mouth has been given a task and it intends to complete it. This was a significant upgrade from the Chicken King Ranch casserole, which, if you recall, I had put directly into the trash with only moderate guilt. The lemon bars were not going into the trash. The lemon bars were going into my face. I sat Margine down at the kitchen table. I cut us both squares. I poured coffee. Margine takes hers with enough cream to turn it the color of wet sand, which is her business and not mine to judge, although I am judging it silently and permanently. We sat. We ate. Margine's 3 cats were visible through her front window across the yard, lined up on the sill in their usual formation. Chairman Meow on the left, Dolly Purton in the middle, the notorious CAT on the right. They watched us through the glass like a panel of very small, very furry judges. Nora, honey, I have to tell you something. Okay. Francine said something at book club. Of course she did. Francine saying something at book club was as predictable as the sun rising in the east or Uncle Teddy eating all the donuts. It was not a question of whether, it was a question of what. She told the ladies at book club, Margine continued, leaning forward slightly, and Gretchen Polk told me, Gretchen is a very reliable source, that Dolores has been telling people you are, and I am using her exact words, unstable and medicated. I set my fork down. Unstable and medicated. Those 2 words placed side by side in the mouth of a woman who had committed identity fraud in her own son's name and promised $80,000 she did not have to a bartender she was blackmailing. Unstable and medicated. From Dolores. I picked my fork back up. I took another bite of lemon bar. I chewed slowly. The powdered sugar caught in my throat for a second and I washed it down with coffee. Marjane. Yes, honey. Do I seem unstable to you? Nora, you are the sanest person on this block. My nephew is a pharmacist and he is less put together than you are. My mailman cries in his truck every Wednesday and he is more publicly unstable than you have been on your worst day. Thank you, Margine. I just thought you should know. And I want you to know that I told Gretchen. I said, Gretchen, that is slander. Pure and simple. That woman is grieving her husband and she has been nothing but gracious and quiet through all of this. And if Dolores Callahan thinks she can stand up in a book club full of women who have known Nora for 4 years and sell that story, she has misjudged her audience. I looked at Margine. Margine looked at me. She had powdered sugar on her upper lip and the expression of a woman who had gone to war on my behalf at a book club meeting and was not done fighting. And Gretchen agreed, Margine said. And Gretchen told Beverly. And Beverly told Lynn. And Lynn told her daughter-in-law, who told her neighbor, who told the woman who runs the coffee cart at the Saturday farmers market. And now every woman in a 6-block radius of this street knows that Dolores Callahan has been running her mouth about a widow, and those women talk Nora. Those women talk loud. I reached across the table. I took Margine's hand. Her fingers were warm from the coffee cup and dusted with powdered sugar, and they squeezed mine with the firm, no nonsense, grip of a 68-year-old woman who has buried a husband and raised 2 sons and is not intimidated by anything this world has left to throw at her. Margine, I said, I owe you a favor, a real one. Someday you're going to call me and ask for something, and I am going to say yes before you finish the sentence. She beamed. She patted my hand. Oh, sweetie, you don't owe me anything. Just eat the lemon bars. I ate the lemon bars. All of them. Every single one. I ate them standing at the kitchen counter after Margine left, one after another, powdered sugar falling onto my shirt. And I did not care because they were excellent, and because I had earned them, and because sometimes a plate of lemon bars made by a woman who believes in you is worth more than a bottle of bourbon and a legal pad combined. That evening, I checked my mail. There was one more letter from Boyd Mercer. The final one, as it turned out. Same crooked sticker. Same Comic Sans, same frying pan scales of justice. This one informed me that my 10-business-day deadline had expired and that Mr. Mercer's client would now be pursuing media outreach through, and I quote, the Nashville Neighbors Network and other relevant community platforms. Other relevant community platforms. I suspect this meant Francine's Facebook page, which has 43 followers, 31 of whom are family members, and which she uses primarily to post photos of sunsets with inspirational quotes attributed to people who did not say them. I did not respond. I did not call Boyd. I did not call Dolores. I did not do anything except fold the letter neatly, place it in the manila folder in the third drawer of Patrick's filing cabinet, and close the drawer. I stood in Patrick's office. I looked at the filing cabinet. I looked at the folder inside it. 3 stacks of paper, 3 documents, the DNA results, the fraud evidence, the estate records. 3 documents, 6 days, 1 room. I closed the drawer. I walked to the kitchen. I washed the plate Margene had brought the lemon bars on. I dried it. I set it on the counter to return to her tomorrow. And I thought, for the first time in weeks, I'm ready. Not happy, not excited, not triumphant, ready. There is a difference between those things. Ready is quieter than all of them. Ready is the sound a woman makes when she has counted everything there is to count, and the numbers are final and the folder is full and the only thing left is the room. I was ready for the room. I want to tell you something honest, because if I make myself sound like a woman who had a plan and executed it cleanly, step by step, without hesitation, I am lying to you, and I don't do that. Not here, not ever. The night before the meeting, I almost gave up. It was 11 o'clock. I was sitting on my kitchen floor. I do a lot of important thinking on my kitchen floor. I don't know what that says about me. My therapist, if I had a therapist, would probably say something about grounding or proximity to comfort, or the fact that the tile is cold, and sometimes when everything inside you is burning, cold is the only thing that helps. But I don't have a therapist. I have a kitchen floor and a phone and a very bad habit of scrolling through the internet when I should be sleeping. I was on Jolene's Instagram. Not because I was stalking her. I was past that. I was past the receipt and the text messages and the 14 months of trying to unknow something I couldn't unknow. I was looking at pictures of Rosie, this round-faced baby with a tuft of dark hair and a gummy smile and cheeks that looked like someone had inflated them with a small bicycle pump. She was wearing a onesie that said Daddy's Girl in cursive letters. Pink, with a little heart. Daddy's Girl. On a baby whose daddy, whoever he actually was either dead or absent, and whose grandmother, the one who claimed her, was using her as collateral in a financial scheme built on identity fraud and forged relationships, and a lawyer who couldn't spell the word fiduciary. I opened Venmo. I typed in Jolene's name. I typed in $30,000. My thumb hovered over the send button. I could end this tonight. I could send her the money, tell her to take it, pay her rent, buy diapers, disappear, never contact me again. 30,000 is nothing. I have 30,000. I could absorb it and move on and never sit in another room with Dolores Callahan and never look at another document and never count another lie. I could be done tonight, right now. I called Willa. It was 11:06. I know the exact time because I am a bookkeeper and I cannot stop being a bookkeeper even when I am falling apart on a kitchen floor at 11 o'clock at night. Willa. Nora. It's 11:06 at night. You better be dying. I'm about to Venmo Jolene $30,000. Silence. No, you're not. I'm tired, Willa. I'm so tired. And that baby didn't do anything wrong, and Jolene is not evil. She's stupid and she's scared and she's being used, but she is not evil. And I could make this go away tonight. I could be done. Nora, listen to me. You are not paying off the woman your mother-in-law manipulated into being a prop. That is not mercy. That is rewarding Dolores. That is handing Dolores a win she did not earn. And more importantly, it does not save Jolene. If you Venmo her $30,000 tonight, Dolores will call her tomorrow and invent a new story and pull her back in. That baby needs her mother free of that woman. $30,000 does not do that. The meeting does. I sat there. The tile was cold under my legs. The refrigerator hummed. Also, Willa said, and I say this with love, Dolores deserves a bad day. She deserves a spectacularly bad day. She deserves a day so bad they write country songs about it. I almost smiled. Nora, you are not cruel. You are clear. There is a difference. Those are 2 different women. And the woman you are becoming is the woman you needed when you were 23, and your mother-in-law looked you up and down at Easter dinner and asked if you'd ever considered a different hairstyle. Do you remember that? I remembered. Easter 2017. Dolores had greeted me at the front door with a glass of sweet tea and the words, "Oh, you're still doing the chin length thing." "Yeah," I said. "I remember. Go to bed, Nora." "Okay." Do you want me to stay on the phone until you fall asleep? No. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, I love you, go to bed. I hung up. I did not go to bed. What I did, because I am apparently a woman who cannot experience a feeling without converting it into a task, was open Patrick's filing cabinet. It was 3 a.m. I had not slept. I was reorganizing the folders. Not because they needed reorganizing, they were already in perfect order. But my hands needed something to do, and the alphabet is reliable, and I needed reliable. I pulled out every folder. I wiped the drawer down. I stacked them on the desk. I started putting them back, A through C, D through F. And then I reached into the back of the drawer to make sure nothing had fallen behind the hanging files, and my fingers touched fabric. Patrick's jacket. His old canvas jacket. The olive green one with the frayed cuffs that he wore to work on cool nights because he said it made him look like a movie character, and I told him it made him look like a man who refused to buy a new jacket, and we were both right. It had been folded and stuffed behind the files. I don't know when he put it there. I don't know why. I pulled it out. I held it. It didn't smell like him anymore. That was the thing that almost broke me, not finding it. Losing the last trace of him in it. I checked the pockets. Left pocket, empty. Right pocket, a gas station receipt from October. Inside pocket, a piece of paper. Folded in quarters. Small. Notebook paper. Torn from a spiral. The kind with the ragged edge. I unfolded it. Patrick's handwriting. The handwriting of a man who wrote like he was in a hurry even when he wasn't. Slanted, messy, alive. You count the numbers, I count the days. Everyone with you is the one I'd choose again. I sat on the floor of his office, 3:17 in the morning, holding a piece of notebook paper that my husband had written for me and carried in his jacket and meant to give me and kept forgetting and then remembered and left me a voicemail about it and then got on his motorcycle and never came home. Remind me to give you something when I get home. It's in my jacket. I keep forgetting. This was the something. This scrap of paper with his terrible handwriting and his small, imperfect poem that did not rhyme and did not scan and was not good by any technical measure of poetry and was the most beautiful thing anyone has ever written for me in my entire life. I cried. For the first time since Patrick died, I cried. Not the Kroger cry, not the tired cry, not the angry cry. This was the real one, the one I had been holding behind my ribs for 7 weeks. It came out of me like weather. Like something that had been building pressure for so long that when it finally broke, it broke everything around it too. I cried on the floor of Patrick's office, holding his poem in one hand and his jacket in the other, and I did not count the minutes, because some things are not meant to be counted. Some things are meant to be felt in their full and terrible and beautiful size. When it was over, I folded the poem back up. I put it in my pocket. Not the folder, not the filing cabinet, my pocket, where it has stayed every day since. I slept 3 hours. I dreamed about Waffle House at 3 a.m. and a man who laughed too loud at his own jokes and a voice on the phone that said, "Don't wait up, but I know you will." I want you to know what I wore to that meeting. Because Willa and I spent 45 minutes arguing about it the night before, and that time was not wasted. Charcoal blazer, black flats, my grandmother's necklace, a thin gold chain with a small pearl she wore every day for 42 years, hair in a low twist, moisturizer, mascara, neutral lip. I looked like a widow. I also looked like a woman who counts things for a living. Those are two specific looks, and I was both. I arrived at the rented conference room at 9:45. Plain room, long table, fluorescent lights, a pitcher of water and paper cups that looked like they came from a gas station. Willa was already there with 2 accordion folders. One held every document I had collected. The other held printed recipes from the internet because Willa believes in theater, and because anyone who glanced at it would see slow cooker meals and think nothing of it. At 9:58, Dolores walked in wearing a cream pantsuit, cream, to a meeting about her dead son's estate, the exact color a person wears when she believes she is about to win something. "Nora," she said, sitting down like a woman accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award, "I hope today we can be adults." Boyd walked in behind her. Accordion folder, a suit that didn't fit in at least 2 dimensions. He offered his hand. His palm was damp. He slid a business card across the table. Same frying pan scales of justice. Shannon came in at 10:02. Hugged me. Wordless. Sat next to Teddy, who was already choosing between a glazed and chocolate-frosted donut with the focus of a man disarming a device. Francine arrived at 10:04 carrying a tote bag containing a bottle of rosé. At 10 in the morning, at a legal proceeding. Jolene came in last. 10:09. Stroller. Rosie asleep. She sat directly across from Dolores and did not look at her. Dolores noticed. A flicker behind the eyes. Boyd opened his folder. He read aloud. In the matter of the estate of Patrick Callahan, we are seeking 50% of the marital residence. 50% of all liquid assets, including the 401k, life insurance, and joint accounts. Ongoing monthly support of $2,500 until the age of majority. He looked up. Proud. I let the silence sit. Willa was writing something on her legal pad. I glanced. The word wow in block capitals, underlined 3 times. Dolores, is this proposal something you endorse? Absolutely. On behalf of my granddaughter. You're certain? Completely. You want that on the record. Her eyes narrowed. Good. I opened my folder. I have 3 documents I'd like to share. I slid the first one across the table. Document 1. Paternity test results dated August 13th. TrueGen Laboratories, Murfreesboro. Chain of custody documented by Willa Tran. Sample source, minor child Rosie. Comparison source, Patrick Callahan, via personal effects retained in the marital residence. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Exclusion confirmed. Dolores went still. The kind of still that happens when a brain is running every exit route and finding them all locked. Jolene started crying quietly. I slid the second packet. Document 2. A credit line of $67,000 opened under Patrick Callahan's name and social security number 3 years before his death. Billing address, a P.O. box in Germantown registered to Dolores Callahan. Patrick had no knowledge of this account. Additionally, federal tax returns in which Dolores claimed Patrick, a married adult, as a dependent for 2 consecutive years. Both constitute criminal offenses. Dolores's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I slid the third. Document 3. The marital residence is titled solely in my name. Purchased in 2016 with separate premarital property. Mortgage in my name alone. Life insurance, $500,000. Beneficiary Nora Callahan, non-probate. 401k beneficiary Nora Callahan, federal law. Joint savings transferred by survivorship. Total assets subject to probate, $6,340. I folded my hands. Dolores, you have demanded 50% of $3,170. You have hired a man who sells insurance for a living to practice law he does not understand. And you have built this on the claim that a child you have never taken to a single doctor's appointment is your dead son's daughter. She is not. Boyd stood up. He picked up his folder. He did not say a word. He walked out at a pace between a power walk and a jog, his scuffed shoes slapping against the floor. He did not close the door. It hung there open. Nobody got up to close it. Jolene spoke next, small voice. She promised me $80,000. She coached me on what to say. She gave me $2,500 cash in an envelope. She threatened to report my DUI if I didn't cooperate. She told me Nora was fragile. She said Nora wouldn't fight. Dolores turned toward Jolene. Nothing. Turned back to me. Nothing. Then she turned to Shannon. Shannon, back me up. You understand what she's doing. That house was supposed to stay in the family. I've been telling you for years. This is why I needed the money. I've been planning this since before he married her. I had a plan for all of it. Your house too, Shannon. I had a plan for everything. She stopped. The room heard what she said about 2 seconds before she did. The sound of a woman who has spoken the quiet part out loud in a room full of witnesses and cannot take it back. Francine pulled her tote bag to her chest like a shield. The rosé clinked inside it. Uncle Teddy had stopped chewing. He was holding half a glazed donut in the air like a man who had been frozen mid-bite by something he could not process. Dolores looked at her own hands. Her fingers were trembling. Not with fear, with the particular vibration of a woman whose entire structure has just been removed from underneath her and who has not yet begun to fall, but knows, somewhere deep in the architecture of herself, that the falling has already started. Shannon stood up, slowly. The way a woman stands, when she has been sitting on something broken for a very long time and has finally decided to get off it. "Mom," Dolores looked at her daughter. For the first time since I had known her, Dolores Callahan looked afraid. "Mom, you stole $38,000 from me. You told me it was for back surgery. You told me Nora was hounding you for money. You told me Patrick had begged you not to tell me. None of that was true. You committed fraud in my dead brother's name. You opened credit cards with his social security number. You claimed him on your taxes while he was married. And you just told this entire room, out loud, in front of witnesses, that you have been planning to take my home." Shannon's voice did not shake. It did not rise. It was the voice of a pediatric nurse, steady, clear, the voice of a woman who holds screaming children still while needles go in. She had been trained for exactly this kind of calm and exactly this kind of storm. "That's not what Dolores started." "It's on the record, Mom," Nora said on the record. "You agreed." Dolores turned to Francine. Francine was clutching her tote bag against her chest. The rosé inside it clinked softly. Francine did not make eye contact. Francine, for what may have been the first time in 75 years, had nothing to say. Dolores turned to Teddy. Teddy was looking at his donut. Dolores turned back to me. I stood up. I gathered my folder. I slid Boyd Mercer's business card into my blazer pocket because Willa had whispered earlier that it would make a good bookmark, and I agreed. "Dolores," I said. She looked at me, her cream pantsuit, her careful hair, her rehearsed pauses that had carried her through a lifetime of rooms. Just like this one, rooms where she had always been the one standing at the head of the table, telling other people what was going to happen. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and for 1 second, just one, I saw something behind her eyes that was not anger, and was not calculation, and was not strategy. It was the understanding, arriving late but arriving completely, that she had done this to herself. "Happy Tuesday, Dolores." I walked out. The hallway was quiet. My flats made no sound on the carpet. Willa was beside me. She did not speak until we reached the parking lot. Then she put her hand on my arm and she said, very quietly, "That was the most extraordinary thing I have ever witnessed, and I once watched a judge throw a stapler at an attorney in family court." I laughed, a short laugh, a real one. 3 weeks later, here is where everyone landed. Shannon has not spoken to her mother. Will not, she told me, over coffee at the place in Midtown, where we'd held the brunch. For the foreseeable future, she is in therapy. She is working with a forensic accountant to determine whether any of the $38,000 is recoverable. She also started taking my calls again on the first ring, which was honestly the thing I was most grateful for. "God gives you family," she said to me once, stirring her coffee, "and then he tests you with them." I told her I thought God might have over-tested the Callahans. She laughed. It was the first time I had heard her laugh since Patrick's funeral. Jolene withdrew her claim. She is paying back the $2,500 at $100 a month in envelopes mailed to my office. I have not cashed any of them. I am not going to cash any of them. She doesn't need to know that yet. That baby needs diapers more than I need $100 a month. Through Willa's network, I connected Jolene with a legal aid attorney who handled her old DUI situation pro bono. The record was expunged. Dolores can never hold it over her again. Boyd Mercer got reported to the Tennessee Board of Professional Responsibility for practicing outside his area of competence. Willa handled the referral herself. She said it was the most satisfying document she had ever filed, and she wanted to frame it. Dolores is alone in her condo in Antioch. Francine is not returning her calls. The book club ladies are not inviting her. First Baptist has gone quiet. Uncle Teddy sent her a card. That was it. A card from her own brother-in-law. She is facing a potential investigation for the credit fraud. I did not file that report. Shannon did. I think Shannon needed to be the one. I believe God has a way of settling accounts that no courtroom can match. I believe he sees the ledger even when no one else does. And I believe, somewhere in the quiet math of grace, that Patrick is at peace knowing the people he loved are going to be okay. I made senior accountant on September 9th. My boss called me into her office the morning of the announcement. She said, "Nora, I don't know what happened this summer. I don't want to know. But whatever it was, you handled it so quietly that nobody in this building heard a thing. That is exactly who we want running this department." I said thank you. I walked back to my desk. I closed my door. I sat down and I laughed alone for about 3 minutes. Because I am a bookkeeper, and bookkeepers are quiet, that is not a weakness. That is the job. That evening I drove home. I sat at the kitchen table. I took the piece of notebook paper out of my blazer pocket, the one that has lived there every day since I found it at 3 in the morning in a jacket that no longer smelled like the man who wore it. I unfolded it. I read it one more time. You count the numbers, I count the days. Everyone with you is the one I'd choose again. I folded it back up. I put it in my pocket. And I understood something I had not understood before. Dolores did not lose because I destroyed her. I didn't destroy anybody. I just turned the lights on. She destroyed herself out loud in a cream pantsuit in front of her own daughter. Every single word that cost her, she said with her own mouth. So if you are ever sitting across from someone who has decided you are the easy target, the quiet one, the woman who won't fight back, I want you to hear me on this. Sit still. Let them talk. Let them commit. Let them build their case out of Comic Sans and imaginary statutes and promises they cannot keep. Grief does not make a widow weak. It makes her quiet. And quiet is not the same thing as done. Thank you for staying with me through this one. It was a long one, I know. If you made it this far, you are my kind of person. If this story touched something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And if you haven't already, subscribe. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. You think this was something, the next story on your screen might just be the one that changes how you see everything. Click it. I'll meet you over there.